Hey everyone, before starting this guide, I have two quick announcements. First is that I want to start casting games played by you, the viewer. To do that, I've set up a Discord server and there's a link in the description along with all the details and rules of the game. First game is going to be open to all players, all skill levels. Please be honest with how good you are or are not at the game because I want to try to do some balancing if that is possible. Secondly, I've set up a subscribe start page if you would care to donate. Dominions 5 is a fun game, but it takes a lot of time to play, and editing big videos like this one takes even longer, so if you feel so inclined as to give back, I will greatly appreciate it, and you can also expect a direct quality upgrade to the videos should I meet regular goals. Furthermore, donators get first dibs on my casted games, because I can only fit in so many players. Tier 3 Imprisoned gets the highest priority. Furthermore, if you donate at Imprisoned tier, you can commission at least one monthly video from me, as long as it's within reason, and I'll try to do it. I'll also try to come up with more rewards for the other tiers. I'm open to suggestions. That's all. Enjoy the guide. Along the Emerald Isle, a battle raged between man and elf. The Thua and Furbolg were destroyed in the conflict. The fabled land of the ever-young was forever lost. The Shi, the descendants of the Thua, retreated into strange twilight realms with entrances hidden in ancient mountains. The land of the Furbolg was split, with the land, now known as Eriu, going to the Milesians. With the coming of the new god, the Dinashi have re-emerged to lead the Milesians and remaining Furbolg to ascension. Middle-Age Eriu is the descendant of early-age TNN, a group of humans led by magical fae who seek to restore themselves to their former glory by following the new god. Eriu is based on Irish mythology, Eriu even coming from the name of the matron goddess of Ireland. Unfortunately, Eriu has some real problems. Their human troops are regarded as indies just wearing green clothes, but I think Eriu has some hidden strengths, mostly because people sort of write them off. So in this guide, I'm going to do a comprehensive breakdown of Eriu, what their strengths and weaknesses are, go over some pretender choices, look at how diplomacy plays into Eriu, and some early, mid, late game strategies and research goals to focus for. The Slinger is the first Milesian. He's interesting. He only costs 7 gold, but he only has 7 morale. His stats are pretty poor. His protection, it's very Eriu. There's nothing particularly noteworthy about this guy, except that he's cheap, and he provides 1 siege strength, as if he was a perfectly normal human. So, for siege chaff purposes, these guys are okay. For taking lance strikes, these guys are probably your cheapest option, but in every other way, they're really terrible. Slings are unfortunately a bad weapon in Dominions 5. Like, you can make them better. In a big horde of these guys with flaming arrows cast, wind guide cast, they become a lot better. But now you're talking like, okay, how do you even get fire on Eriu? You got to take it on your god, or get super lucky with a indie. Even with wind guide, it's not like they're hitting very hard, only 8 bludgeoning. So they do have a use against some unarmored troops, like lizards. Against just slave warriors, they can be okay. But otherwise, their primary tool is basically chaff. The Spearman is 10 gold. You get an independent unit that has bad stats, +1 magic resistance. Nothing else about this guy is noteworthy. And then you have the Milesian Longspear, who amazingly has a slightly longer spear. And then the Milesian Swordsman, who comes at us with a whopping 13 protection, although it's actually 12 on the body, so really bad protection, costs a lot of resources. He has a broadsword, which is a fine weapon, it's adequate, but this guy, he's just not really worth making. Well, I say that, but here we're looking at the Furbolg Slinger. Much like the other Slinger, the sling is not a good weapon. Even with this guy's extra precision, he's still using a sling at the end of the day. His protection is 4. It's embarrassingly bad. He doesn't have anything else to protect him. He doesn't even have a shield. He costs 1 more gold than a generic indie, but he doesn't really provide anything of use. He has 13 magic resistance, which is kind of neat. But he eats up recruitment points, and you can get recruitment point gated on this nation very easily. Just not worth spending gold on. So this Furbolg has a bronze axe and a shield instead of a javelin and a sling, and he's a lot better. You can see right off the bat his stats are substantially higher. He's got more protection, he's got more morale, but he does cost more gold. This unit's decent. I wouldn't say he's your best Furbolg troop, but he's pretty okay. With 18 slashing damage, you can really butcher low protection, low morale troops. So basically tribe. Lion tribe, deer tribe. This guy can really chop them up efficiently. He's not very useful against anything that has decent protection. So this is the Furbolg with a spear and a javelin. His stats are even higher thanks to his better weapon. He doesn't have as much straight damage as the axe Furbolg, but he makes up for it with the pierce damage trait on his spear, which means he's going to ignore 20% of his target's protection, which makes a big difference. You go down from 20 protection to 16, and that is a very substantial jump. He's got 2 javelins that he can throw. En masse, javelins are excellent. They're basically the same as a spear attack, except you can deal the damage without putting yourself at risk. So for that purpose, these units are excellent. They're probably your best Furbolg troop. So we get to your Sacred, the Dina Shi. This is a pretty good unit. He's better than the Furbolg with a spear in basically every way. More morale, more attack. He does cost 35 gold, but compared to other Sacred units, this is a bit of a discount. It's not very egregious. They have Dark Vision, which can be important. Glamour, which is essential. Stealthy, Sacred. They're elves, basically. Forest survival, too. So if you're trying to elf your opponents, this is the primary unit that you're going to use to do it with. With enough holy points, you can really mass these guys up. They take a bless very well, but it does depend on the nature of the bless. We'll get more into that later. All in all, really the worst trait about these guys, apart from their low protection, is that their map move isn't very good. It's only 12, and you would hope for an elf unit the ability to move across a lot more provinces a lot quicker, and these guys can't really do that. They also have the elf problem of having low hit points, and their morale isn't actually very good. When they get blessed, it'll go up to 13 at a base, and when you're in your dominion, home province, that sort of stuff, it can go up by 1 more. But it's still not that great. So these guys, they tend to run if you start taking losses. If you start taking big losses, they'll generally run away. So if you're going to recruit these units, it's in your best interest to take a bless that'll keep them alive. So those are the units. We should go into the commanders. So the Milesian Scout. Nothing really to say here. He's just a scout with a green shirt. He's got 1 extra MR. Useful to have. The Milesian champion, I would never make this unit. A nice thing about Furbolg is they don't take a lot of resources. Even your Sacred doesn't take that much. So this guy can eat into the amount of Furbolg that you can actually produce. So I wouldn't make this. I would just make a Furbolg champion. I would only make these commanders for pushing troops around anyway. If you... Then we have the Milesian monk, and this is a interesting unit because a critical element of this nation is not featured here on this monk. Basically, this guy, he costs 35 gold. He's Holy One. He's not an elf, though, so he's just a straight Holy One. He can be useful. He can definitely be useful, and I will explain why. So here we have the Bard. This guy's very neat. This is your other scout. He has the Spy trait, which is a very fun, cool trait that I love a lot. He's Nature 1, so he can spam out Swarm. He's got 7 research points. He's pretty cheap on the gold. He does consume a lot of money per year, so he's alright for research. He can't really do a lot in battle outside of cast Swarm. They also have this trait, Spell Singer. Spell Singers take longer time to cast spells, but it is also much less fatiguing. Spell Singer has no effect on divine spells. So I'll tell you some info about Spell Singer. It can never be turned off. It applies to not just non-divine spells, but also non-item spells. Specifically what it does is it adds plus 50% to the spell time. However, the fatigue from casting a spell is halved, and that includes encumbrance. So effectively what Spell Singer does for you is it makes your initial burst of magic weaker, but it makes your long-term magic power projection stronger. So Spell Singer is overall a buff, because there's a lot of spells you're going to be casting as Eriu that eat up your fatigue, so it's nice to have, but it is important to note that because your spells take a while to come out, there is something worth considering with the Milesian monk. So, as Spellsinger mentioned, Divine Magic doesn't require, like, Spellsinger doesn't apply to Divine Magic, but still, your Shi Lords, Shi Champions, Thua, so on, their scripts are going to be packed full of stuff already, of so many spells that they need to cast, and they're going to be casting those spells slower. So a way to cheat out extra speed in battle is to recruit some Milesian monks to go along with your Furbolg forward army that you can't sneak around, and have these guys just bless. It's not that blessing takes any longer because of Spellsinger, but it's because other spells take longer that this is worth considering. And they're cheap. They're only 35. So now we get to the first of your commanders that I think are genuinely good, starting with the Shi Champion. 160 gold, 9 research points, Air 1, Nature 1, Holy 1. He's an elf. He's got a magic weapon. I would consider this a secondary mage. Magically, he is limited. He can cast some important spells. Cast Aim if you give him a ranged weapon. Say a Bow of War. Cast Air Shield, Charge Body, Flight, Bark Skin, Swarm. With the gem, he can cast Misform and or Personal Regeneration, but he can't Cloud Trapeze. So basically, they're good for holding up in a fort, researching, and if an enemy army walks onto your fort, then you Cloud Trapeze a Thua into the lab and have that Thua cast Storm, and suddenly all these guys are now Air 2. And these guys will eat up a lot less money per year than the Shi Lord, which is basically what they're competing against. So these guys definitely have a lot of use. They're probably best for expansion armies and research. And now we get to the most exciting fun mage of the nation, the She Lord. So this guy's expensive, 260 gold, 11 research points, 2 air, 1 nature, holy 2. He's an elf. His map move's insane, 26. He can basically go everywhere. He can cast all the same stuff the She Champion can cast, but he can also Thunderstrike in a storm or with a gem. The problem with these units is, while they are really good, they have a lot of attacks, they're really killy, is they're really expensive and they eat up your money dramatically. They're definitely your primary mage in terms of battlefield power. They're very comparable to a Van Jarl. You can see the Van Jarl's a little more expensive. He has more protection, more morale, less attack, and a little more defense. And most obviously, he replaced nature for blood. You should really think of the She Lord much as you'd consider a Van Jarl. Very good thugs. They can go around, they can raid enemy provinces, they can counter-raid. They're an excellent thug chassis that you can recruit from all forts. The ability to cloud trapeze makes them head and shoulders above the She Champion for winning the game. But because of their cost, they're a little prohibitive to produce constantly. So here we have the Banshee, who is 200 gold for 13 research points. She is Water 1, Air 1, Nature 1, and also random for one of these. So you could get Air 2, Water 2, Earth 1, or Nature 2 on this mage. This is not a mage I would ever send into combat to Thug. The problem is her morale is 10, which is embarrassingly poor. Like, you could Thug with Banshees, but there's just better options. Really, the best thing Banshees are for is researching and casting your rituals. So, Air 2 Banshees obviously can Cloud Trapeze. They can summon Hawks, which are crucial for cracking open forts. They can do Auspex if you wanted to check for air sites. Your Water 2s in battle, they can cast Rain. You can bring them along with a She Champion and Quickness them, cast Quickness buff on them. With another Water Gem, they can cast Water Elementals. The Water 2 Banshees can make bottles of water. They could make boots of quickness, although it is important to note your horses sadly can't wear the shoes. With a water bracelet and a robe of the sea, you can boost these women to Water 4, and from there you can make naiads or sea kings, the trolls. And if you equip one of those mages with a water bracelet and a robe, they can summon a Queen of Water. Earth 1 Banshees are probably the least exciting ones to get. They can buff themselves with Iron Skin and Stone Skin, but still, they have 10 morale. Notably, they can craft Armor of Knights, and that's very, very important for your thugs. That makes them a lot more tanky, a lot more resistant. You definitely need some Earth ones, but their battlefield usage is limited because they can't make Earth shoes. You have no real way to get Earth shoes outside of taking high Earth on your Pretender. If you could get them to Earth 2, then they would be okay, because with Earth 2 they can cast Summon Earth Power, but that's basically something that you have to do with your Pretender. If you get Nature 2 with these, you can do all the nature stuff you can do with the She Lord. You can make a Thistle Mace, get her to Nature 3, which gets you basically all of the important nature items that you could possibly want. Vine Shields. You can get Boots the Messenger. She can cast Mass Protection, Creeping Doom, Howl, Swarm. She can cast Foul Vapors too. So taking a Poison Resistance Bless is definitely worthwhile on Eriu, because Foul Vapors for you is very, very doable. And finally, we get to our Thua, who are 440 gold, slow to recruit, 17 research points, 3 air, 2 nature, and then a random of air, water, earth, or nature 100% of the time. And occasionally, rarely, they'll be a little higher. Since these are slow to recruit, you probably won't see these. But this unit is an elf. It's got 10 protection. It's got 120 leadership. This guy is fantastic. He is your primary battle mage for the end game. So air randoms, air 4 randoms, you can craft the air helmet and then a bag of air to be air 6. And now suddenly the Thua can cast Air Queen. And with the air elemental royalty, those women can cast all the big endgame air spells. Gale Gate, Fog Warriors, Wrathful Skies, Mass Flight, Storm, Aerofen. They do it all. So getting an Air 4 Thua is very important for that. Getting a Water 1 is a little less impressive. They can cast Quicken Self. They can make the Book of Water Breathing if you need to go underwater. With a gem, they can cast Foul Vapors. And they're better at it than Banshees because of their map move. They can get to critical battles more often. They can Cloud Trapeze there too. Nature 3 Thuas can get Ivy Kings, Troll Shamans if you want Death 1, and a third of the time they'll be Death 2. They cast Mass Regeneration, Cure Disease, Gift of Reason, and they get all of the important nature items. Really all of them. The Earth 1 Thuas are probably the least exciting. They can cast Iron Skin, so you don't need to give them equipment. If you gave them a Thistle Mace, they could cast Strength of Gaia on themselves, so they'd be Nature 3, Earth 1, which is kind of neat. And they get regen and all the other Strength of Gaia stuff. But make no mistake, these are definitely your big blaster mages. If you want to win mid-late game battles, you need Thuas in them because they are essential for casting your air spells. They're also essential for casting your big nature spells too. Other ones I didn't mention, Relief, Howl. So here I have the heroes for Eriu, sorted by basically how useful they are. So on the far left, we have the Furbolg hero. He's got high stats and Berserker +5. He has 80 leadership, so he can lead armies. He's good for arena battles where you're not allowed to use magic, but otherwise he's kind of eh. He's just got good stats. You have this hero who is a free spawn Sacred Commander who amazingly has some of the highest protection you'll find in the nation. He actually bothers to wear chainmail. He has 120 leadership, which isn't too special, but he comes with Inspirational 1. So for leading your big giant armies, this hero is your best. And you're going to get quite a handful of them. Then you have this hero riding his chariot. He is a special snowflake for sure. He's got very high stats. 23 defense is pretty insane. 18 morale. He has this javelin that can net enemies. He never hits with it, but if he did, it would net. He's got fire resistance, fire shield, awe +3, berserker +8, which is just crazy. He can trample. He has the potential to be absolutely insane. He really just needs some extra protection, and he can solo province defense. And if you want to make him even better, give him some extra reinvigoration so he doesn't pass out. With defense this high and berserker built in, he's extremely killy. And then we have the Trainer of Heroes, who is a very, very good mage. She's Death 2, so this is your big way into death. She's stealthy, flying, glamour. She has a excellent decaying spear that also life drains. So it's a very special snowflake weapon. You can absolutely thug with this hero. She's very, very good at it. Give her some extra protection. She can do mist form. Extremely good. You can break into death with her. You can spam out skull staffs. Give them to your Death 1 revenants. Spam Horde of Skeletons. She can get you into death. Super amazing thug chassis. Just note the low protection, low HP, and somewhat moderate encumbrance. With Luck 3, in 2 separate games, I got her on turn 5 and then turn 4. And then lastly, you have the last Partholonian, who has good stats. He's a very good researcher. He has Air 2, Water 1, and Death 4. So absolutely incredibly high death. This is the mage that gets you Wailing Winds and Winds of Death, both of them insane evocations. It can cast Well of Misery after a Skull Staff plus a Death Hat. Get him to Death 6, he can start pumping out Wraith Lord, Super Combatant Chassis, spam Vortex of Unlife, mass undead armies, Foul Air Global if you have enough skeletons. Like, this guy can change your whole nation. If you give Revenant Skull Staffs, you can Sight Search everywhere for Death 2. Don't forget to Twiceborn with these two mages. They're so important, it's definitely worth doing. This is your super duper, you hope to RNG this that you get, but it is random. And that's sort of the same thing with the Trainer of Heroes too, they're both random, so you can't quite guarantee that you'll get them. If you're running Luck 3, it's pretty much a guarantee, but if you're not, then... Next we can talk about Eriu's national spells, or I should say spell. The only spell Eriu gets is Contact Kushi, which for 6 nature gems you get 7 of these dogs, which is not a bad trade. These guys come out early at Conjuration 3. You can see they're not really performing very well against knights. They are stealthy, they have 20 map moves, so they can be useful for elf parties, but they're animals, so they're susceptible to all the anti-animal spells. They can hold your bless, so they do get stronger with a big bless. They have fine stats, high HP. Really the big problem is only having 1 attack, and that being a bite. So they're quite handy to have with your She-Lords roaming around, but as the game goes along, they drop off in value, as nature gems need to get spent on items. But if you have Dark Vision, and you want a Sacred on a stick, so here I have 3 turns of dog recruitment, going up against a handful of Lion Tribe. Frankly, this is a pretty tiny number of Lion Tribe. Eriu also gets a single special item, the Shillelagh. It's a one-handed weapon. It gives Lucky. You get a Construction 2 Nature 1 for 5 gems. It's got low attack, minor damage, minor defense buff, but you do get this little cool sprite. He can shoot these 100 fatigue damage arrows. But the real advantage of the Shillelagh is that it grants Lucky to the wielder, so you can get luck on your Shees without Astral. Frankly, it's kind of a garbage weapon, but getting Lucky on your critical combat mages can be game-changing. Later in the game, you're going to have giant death balls of shock power, fueled by Thua, and you really want to keep them alive. Giving them all lucky in an otherwise fairly useless item slot is pretty great. And it's only for 5 nature gems. So here I have a single She-Lord, Thua, I'm not sure, with his Shillelagh, beating down a tiny amount of Lion Tribe. And you can see the sprite is fatiguing some of them. And they do run. So now that we've completed our in-depth look at all the elements of Eriu, look at their strengths and weaknesses more objectively. So their strengths, number one, definitely their elves. They can cloud trapeze, they've got access to stealth, they have really high stats, and they have excellent protection with glamour. They have great air and nature access, they have some death and earth access, and they have good water access too, for whatever water is going to get you. They have strong Furbolg national troops, so their expansion is pretty great. Their lack of siege shaft can be made up with great eagles too. Their temples are cheap, only costing 200 gold. They have Spellsinger, and while you need to adjust your script to compensate for the extra time, in long battles it means you can project a lot more power. Eriu has some pretty terrible weaknesses though. They have horrible human troops. Really critical units are on horses. The enemy can use the target cavalry command to assassinate them, which is a fun, unique weakness that Eriu has. They do lack magic diversity, and their death access is pretty much RNG. They're elves, which is also a negative. Without glamour, they're pretty weak. They have very low protection and high gold cost, and when it comes to diplomacy, it's not a strict positive. And they fall off late game as they don't have any blood or astral, so those nations, when they come online, they really overpower Eriu. And even though they have cheap temples, they have no Holy Three priests, so there's no way for them to claim thrones natively. So with these in mind, let's look at pretender design. So there are a few pretenders that I've come up with. This one is probably the least interesting, just this Earth Sneck. With this, you do get Earth 4, so you get the Earth Shoes. It can cast Earth Blood Deep Well on its own. Basically, you're full on into Earth, but your scales aren't very great. Sloth 3 is still doable thanks to your low resource cost, but it's hard. Having this many candles is useful for spamming out your sacreds, and getting Magic 3 assures your late game is pretty good, and you hit your mid game goals when you need to. It's probably preferable on maps with lots of water to go with the Earth Serpent over the other Awake Expander, which is this thrice-horned boar. So with this guy, you still get the Earth 4 that you need, but you also get Nature. With this, you get low light vision if you're going to play around darkness. You have some poison resistance to protect yourself from foul vapors. Your income is actually pretty good, even though you've gone Sloth 3 because you're only Heat 1. You still have magic. This is acceptable for a shorter game. If you were in a bigger lobby and you still wanted to use this boar, I would go Heat 3 and Magic 3. But since gold can be more important in shorter games, this is more efficient on your income. With this, you should be able to take a lot of provinces in year 0, and the boar is a boon to any early game war. With Berserker 5 and Trample, it's very, very tough. For Rainbow Blesses, this is the first one I created. With this crone, you get full magic diversity with this lady. All options are open to you. Very importantly, crystal gear is available. Your sacreds will be super resistant to everything with this bless. This is a very versatile chassis, and the scales are good too. It's not exactly an early game powerhouse, but with this you can make your sacreds relevant for practically the entire game. I'd consider dropping the 1 production for more Dom candles. Sacreds can be important. You can dump Magic 3 if you're in a shorter game, by the way. Same thing applies with the boar. So this is sort of a meme. No, this is definitely a meme. This is definitely retarded. The Archmage starts with fire, so if you want, you can go full on, full bore, fire 9, and get attack skill +3, and take larger. This is all about abusing repel checks on your She Lords. Because they're size 3, you can get them up to size 4, and when they're size 4, their weapons will be length 4, which basically means everyone who's going to be attacking you in Dominions 5 is going to have to make a repel check to hit you. And because your attack skill is so crazy high because of your bless, it's really hard for you not to hit them first because of the way repel works. I don't think this bless is very good. This is not optimized at all. It's very goofy. It surely gives you flaming arrows if you want that. I can't say I would recommend this over the Crone if you're just going for a Rainbow Bless, but you can certainly surprise people with this. It makes your She Lords a lot better at thugging, and it makes your Thua extremely potent at thugging. You don't even need to give them much gear for them to be good at killing. This doesn't do very much for your Dina She, but the extra attack skill is, of course, nice. And so here we have the Pretender that I think is probably the best, the Immobile Awake Monolith. So the crux of this bless is Twist Fate. Twist Fate is actually extremely good on elves in general, and Eriu's elves are no different. Basically, because of glamour and super high defense skill, it's really hard for troops to actually hit elves in the first place. So with Twist Fate, it basically means that those indies have to make that really hard hit check a second time. And you still get your reinvigoration, you get your low light vision, poison resistance for foul vapors. The scales aren't bad at all, considering your rock is awake. I wanted Luck 1 because I want to get my heroes more often. You could swap it with Magic 1 if you think the heroes are less valuable. Expansion with this bless is extremely easy. Here I have the Twist Fate Sacred Bless from the Monolith. This is the starting expansion army with a couple turns worth of sacred production. And this is a heavy cav province, 6 of them, no joke, but we've got Twisted Fate on. No damage. No damage taken on a land strike. Probably the most threatening indie damage possible. Or even, this province is also filled with heavy infantry too. The Sacreds go up, they fight them. No losses. Perfect expansion on an otherwise extremely difficult province. That is the power of this bless. In the first year, I can get 30 plus provinces. No problem. You should always assume your opponents are capable, as there is little good in doing the opposite. Therefore, what can we do diplomatically to win as Eriu? Most players assume Eriu is a bottom-tier nation and not worth considering as threatening. Well, let's talk about why your neighbors should be afraid of you. So as an elf, your glamour troops do not show up in scout reports, unless the scout has spirit sight in the off chance that that's the case. This is essential for cloaking troop movements and denying your opponents information about how strong you really are. With stealthy troops, you can move your units into enemy lands without them ever knowing. Therefore, you can elf your opponents, as in annex their entire pathetic country in one turn. You also have the ability to raid with impunity. With magical movement, such as Cloud Trapeze, you can bring thugs to bear on top of enemy armies or provinces before their movement is triggered. This means that you can always get the upper hand on your enemy. You don't have to worry about guessing where their armies will move and reacting based off that. And thus you can counter-raid perfectly too. One She Lord in a fort with an armory of various types of items can be equipped to delete a variety of enemy forces. Furthermore, should your opponent also have magical movement, if you hide in your province, you will not be caught by the teleporting unit. What this all means in practice is that everyone bordering you is going to have their own Easter Monday.
And when I put the Sam Brown on, she was smiling sure cheers as she placed the broad black primer on me head. It's just the broad black primer, ribbons frayed and torn.
Therefore, when you encounter a player, they will have two reactions to you. Either they treat you like the second coming of Michael Collins, or MA Eriu. Thus, it's important that even though you are an elf nation, it's not strictly good to set up non-aggression pacts with all your neighbors just so you can break them while eating their entire country. Very quickly, you'll shift into the nega-Jesus spectrum of diplomacy, and you'll find yourself at war with the entire world. Know what your opponents are doing. Try to get non-neighbors to fight some of your neighbors, and then go fire the first shot against an isolated opponent. Infiltrate, search, and destroy. Cripple their economy. Don't allow yourself to be hit back unless it's on your terms. Be decisive with your aggression, and don't let your opponents have an opportunity to breathe. Raid in smaller parties, and then consolidate for mass battles. In the background, I've had some test footage of early game expansion with Eriu, so it's probably prudent that we talk about what exactly Eriu should be doing at the various phases of the game. It partially depends on your bless, but early game, you definitely want to expand with Furbolg. Naked She-Lords can beat light indies, depending on what your alteration magic is at, and also what your bless is. Basically, Barkskin helps a lot. Your Sacreds, too, can be absolutely insane. Get a fort up before the end of year 1. It's very crucial. Your cap has very important mages it needs to be producing. See what your neighbors can do. If they have magic weapons, consider going for Conjuration 2 and Evocation 5 for Storm and Thunderstrike. But if they have Shock resist, get Conjuration 5 instead. Air elementals will work better. Be wary of Elephant and Lizard provinces, because they are tough, but lizards can sort of be dealt with by slingers. You can get Construction 2 for Owl Quills, just be careful with your air gem expenditure, you really don't want to use too much. Construction 4 gets you important thug gear, fine shields, frost brands, etc. We already talked about Alteration 1, but at Alteration 3 you get Misform, very important. Enchantment 4 is one of your biggest goals that lets you get Cloud Trapeze, also Seeking Arrow 2, which can be useful against some nations, such as Xibalba. In the mid-game, you want your She champions to sneak your Sacreds into enemy lands and support with Cloud Trapezing She Lords, based on strategic considerations. This is really where you come online and when you hit your big research goals. So you want Conjuration 5 Elementals, Evocation 5 Storm, Thunderstrike. At Alteration 7, you want to be getting Wooden Warriors, Mother Oak, Mass Protection, and Fog Warriors. You want to get Perpetual Storm at Evocation 6, and at Construction 6 just for more items in general, too many to list. But a general way to buff out your She-Lords during this time, they should be blessed. They need Barkskin, Air Shield, Mist Form, Personal Regeneration, Flight, and Elemental Resist, depending on what type of elemental damage you're going up against. Cloud Trapeze them onto enemy lands where they're needed. Give them a Frost Brand and Vine Shield if they're just killing PD. If they need to be more tanky, they can have Armor of Knights. If you need even more survivability, the Dancing Trident can help. You want Vine Ogres via Awaken Ivy King or just the Ivy Crown item. That is a very sturdy frontline. Your dogs can also work as side raiders to go along with your She-Lords with a bless. Great Eagles at Conjuration 6 are your best bet for cracking forts. If you're going to save your air gems for anything, you definitely save it for Great Eagles. Banshees really come into their own at this time. They can swarm spam. You can use Frozen Heart against isolated elite units. They can buff your She Lords with quickness, Wave Warriors, or Fire Resist. They can cast Bone Melter, which is just a Soul Slay equivalent. With Earth Shoes, Earth Power, Earth Gems, they can do Legions of Steel, Strength of Giants, Rust, Mist, and Iron Bane. And in big battles, you want Howl, maybe Wind Guide if you have enough projectiles. Darkness, especially if you have Dark Vision Bless. Rain, Mist, and Foul Vapors are all excellent. And just in general, try to crank out a Death Gem economy with heroes, because if you get through mid-game and you haven't won, then you need something to back it up. So once you hit late game, use Death for Darkness, Stygian Rains, Wailing Winds, Wind of Death, Wraith Lord plus Vortex of Unlife is a busted combo. Get Conjuration 8 for Living Elementals and Elemental Royalty, Alteration 9 for Army of Gold or Lead. Evocation 7 gets you Wrathful Skies, but you definitely need a lot of lightning resist. Shimmering Fields is an excellent spell too. At Construction 7 you get Golems and Weapons of Sharpness. At Enchantment 8 you get Relief, which is not super critical thanks to your Spellsinger trait. Mass Flight at Enchantment 8 too. Earthblood Deepwell. Gift of Reason, Arrow Fend, Mass Flight, the Thunder Fend, Mists of Deception, Mass Regeneration, Lichcraft. Enchantment 8 gives you a tremendous number of important spells. You can get Thaumaturgy 8 for Syllable of Sleep, Dark Skies, Charm, or Gale Gate. You could also get the Worm that walks. And if you're really desperate, you can go Conjuration 9 for Tarts. Just take over the whole world. So that's all for Eriu. I encourage everyone, if you have more info to share, to please mention it in the comments. And hopefully this video can act as a sort of centralized place of information for a country that I think is pretty neglected, when it really isn't that bad. It's not the worst. If you like this video, please do the subscribing and liking and stuff. It took a pretty chunk of time to put all the info together and give it in a digestible format. And if you want to give back, Subscribe-Star donations are in the description. Finally, if you want to play in any games that I may cast and put on YouTube, there's a Discord link in the description.